Welcome back, y'all. Let's go ahead and get started in this module by opening up a new Xcode project. And we're going to make this, or we're going to start out with the single view app template. Even though it's not going to be a single view app, we're going to turn it into that, but we'll go ahead and start with that template. And as always, you can name this whatever you want, but I'm just going to name it Cool Countries. And as usual, fill it out just like you see here. And we're going to use Swift and storyboards. So let's go ahead and click next. And create that wherever you want it to go. Cool. Okay, so now the first thing that we're going to do now that we're in here, we haven't really done this up to this point, but we're going to do a little bit of restructuring. This application will be a little bit bigger than the usual one in terms of just files and whatnot. So I want to do a little bit of cleanup. And we're going to add a few folders over here. We'll add a couple more throughout the application, but let's go ahead and start by creating a new group, and we're going to call that application, and we're going to put our application files in here. So we'll put the app delegate and the scene delegate in that application folder or group, and then let's create another group, and we'll call it ViewControllers, and we'll put the ViewController class in there for now, or the ViewController file, excuse me. Now let's create one more group, and we'll call it interfaces, and we're going to put the main storyboard and the launch screen storyboard in that folder. So this is a little bit easier to digest. Let's go ahead and move these two up here to the top. Cool. So this makes things just a little bit easier to look at, and we're going to add a couple more folders while we're making this application, but that just kind of helps us get started. So let's go ahead and open up the main storyboard, and what we're looking at right now is just a regular old view controller, kind of like what we're used to seeing, but we're actually not going to use this. So let's go ahead and start by clicking the plus button up here and search for navigation controller. And let's grab this one right here, and let's drag this into the project. So what you'll see is that we have a navigation controller right here. This represents the don't worry too much about it right this second, but basically this navigation controller just represents the thing that holds all of the view controllers that you want to navigate to and be able to go back from. Like you've seen in many applications, you'll see like the back button at the top. That's the navigation controller just keeping track of all of the view controllers that you have in that application, or at least in that little flow or whatever. So we'll dive a little bit more into that in a minute. But that's basically the navigation controller. And then you see here this little arrow, which is just showing the relationship to what's called the root view controller. So this is the root view controller of the navigation controller, or in other words, the lowest or first the first view controller in the navigation controller. So whenever we navigate to this navigation controller, this will be the first view controller that we see. Okay, cool. So we actually don't need this one anymore, like I said. So what we can do is we can either, this little arrow represents the entry point of this storyboard. So we can either drag this over to the navigation controller, or another way to do the same thing is to click on the actual controller. And then in the property inspector, you can click this thing right here that says is initial view controller. But we want this to be the initial one, so we want to make sure that that arrow is there. Now we can go ahead and get rid of this view controller right here. So go ahead and select it, and then click the delete button. If I can get it to work. There we go. Click over here if you can't get it to work, and delete, and then just click the delete key. So now this is what we're working with right here at first. This is the navigation controller, and it's table view controller. So you've actually never seen one of these before, but if we look at the inspector over here, we're going to see that this is a UI table view controller, not just a regular UI view controller. So we'll dive a little bit more into what that means in a minute, but essentially this just means that the purpose of this view controller is to hold a table view, which is like what we saw a minute ago in the demo that I showed you, which is just a component that holds a bunch of items that you can click on and do something with. So a UI table view controller is meant to do just that. Its sole purpose is to show you a table view. So what we need to do now is we can either modify this file right here to now reflect the table view controller by doing something like this. But instead of doing that, I actually want to show you another tool that we haven't seen before. So we're going to just go ahead and ditch this file and not worry about it for right now. So let's go ahead and just click delete. And let's click on the ViewControllers folder right here, and we're going to click New File, and then I'll show you something that we haven't done yet. We've created files before, but we haven't created files specifically for a UIKit subclass, or in this case, we want to create a UITableViewController. So if we want to get some of the boilerplate code from that class, instead of clicking Swift File and writing it all by hand, we can click this thing right here, click Cocoa Touch class. Basically, a Cocoa Touch class is just a UIKit class, so a view controller, or a UI collection view cell, or a UI table view seller, or a UI table view controller, anything like that, a UI anything. If you want to create that and get the boilerplate code from it, we're going to click this right here. So click Cocoa Touch class. And then this is fine for me. We'll call it TableViewController, and make sure that you select this down here. So you could, if you just type, you'll see what I'm talking about, UITableViewController. You don't need to click this checkbox right here, and then just make sure it's in the Swift language, and we'll click Next. And then just go ahead and create that right there. So now you should have this TableViewController file inside the ViewControllers folder, and we're going to see here that this comes with a bunch of code. A lot of it's commented out. Most of it we're not going to need, but it is nice to go ahead and have some of this code already here, such as the view did load and the number of sections in table view, number of rows and sections. We're going to need all of this stuff to get us started. So now that we've got that set up, let's go back to the main storyboard. Let's click on this right here. Just click on the root view controller, and then we're going to type table view controller so that we can link this up to our subclass. So now that we've got that done, let's do just a little bit more UI work here. So if we click on this thing right here, you'll see that we've got the table view in the hierarchy, and then we've got the table view cell and the content view. So the table view cell is the thing that we're going to use to create each row in the table view, which, if you'll remember, was just a list of countries. So all that we really need inside of this table view cell is like a label. So we've got the content view here, which is where we're going to place the elements that we want to see in each cell. So we're going to treat this just like anything else that we've done so far. If we want a label, we're just going to go here. We're going to grab the label, and we're going to add it to the content view. And we'll see that now the label is inside the content view. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to add two constraints. I'm going to do a 20 from the left, and I'm going to do a 20 from the right. And let's go ahead and constrain that. It's obviously complaining because it has no Y position. It doesn't know where to be Y with respect to the Y axis inside the content view. So we'll just fix that real quick by vertically centering it inside the container. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is, just as a placeholder, let's just put country name here so we know what that label is for. Now, one more thing we're going to do before we wrap up this video and jump into the next one is we need to, now that we've created a subclass for the table view controller, we also need a subclass for the TableViewCell. And this is something also new, something that we haven't really dealt with much before. So let's create a new group here, and we're going to call this group cells. And I'm going to place this group right above the view controllers group. And I'm going to create a new file. This is also going to be a Cocoa Touch class. And we're going to call this country cell. And it's going to be of type UITableViewCell. You can see that it added some stuff here. Make sure you don't get that. We just want ours to be called country cell. So country cell is a subclass of UITableViewCell. We don't need a zip file, and we're going to make it in Swift. And we'll go ahead and create that. And then we'll see here that we've also got some more boilerplate code. Actually, for this particular example, we're not going to need any of these. We're not going to need the awake from nib, and we're also not going to need the set selected. So just go ahead and erase that for now. All that we care about is that we have a class called country cell, and it's of type UITableViewCell. So here we're going to do the last thing real quick, and you'll see why we did that. So now that we've got this cell here, let's click on the table view cell in the hierarchy over here. Let's go to the inspector, and let's, just like we made the table view class a table view controller, we're going to make this table view cell of type country cell. And now one last thing real quick. If you hold the option key, and over here on the left, we click country cell, we'll see country cell file over here on the right. And now here's where things get really cool. Now, you're used to adding IB actions and IB outlets to view controllers, but we can also add them to cell classes. So if we hold the control key and we drag this, I'm going to do it from over here. If we drag this label into the country cell class, we can now add a name label. And now this this cell subclass has an IB outlet for the name label. So we're going to go ahead and stop this video right here. We'll pick up in the next one, and I'll show you why we actually added the IB outlet and what we're going to do with that to set the name. So I'll see you in the next video.